Hey guys, this morning we're gonna take a look at one final comparison between an audio to digital converter and the PreSonus 4848s that we've been using in the studio up until now to see if there's any advantage in upgrading the converters for the print track and changing the workflow in the studio. So today we're looking at the let's see, we're looking at the Burl Bomber, the B2 Bomber, which is an analog to digital converter box. Again, stereo, so it's got two analog to digital converters in it. In this case, however, the Burl is a little bit different than either the Dangerous Music that we looked at or the Rupert Neve that we looked at in the fact that in this case the Burl is known to be a color box. It is intentionally coloring the sound. There's no way to switch out the transformers and other circuitry that they're using to color the sound. So, in all honesty, this is not a fair comparison to the clean analog to digital converters that were running in the 4848 with no other processing happening. So we're just going to take a quick look at this. And instead of focusing on whether or not the converter quality is going to improve, basically the idea behind this comparison is to just find out whether or not the Burl, the coloration that the Burl is providing to the print track is something that's desirable for our workflow or honestly something that is readily and largely apparent upon listening. Okay. So, just to retread the same ground again, the process for this comparison is exactly the same. David has a mix on the board in the studio using a good amount of the hardware involved. This is a full, complete, ready for the artist mix. It's got all kinds of outboard compression going on, EQ going on. There's reverb all involved in it. Everything. This is a complete and ready to go mix. Okay, running through the master bus processing that he also uses with the Empress EQ, the Rupert Neve Portico 542 tape emulators, the SPL Big stereo image widener, and the SSL bus compressor that's on the console. So this mix is already pretty well saturated, and then it's being run both through the clean converters in the 4848 and printed back in, and then it's being run through the Burl and being printed back in. And in this case, the Burl, which is intended to emulate the saturation and characteristics of a tape emulator, it's basically taking a mix that's already got a tape emulation function on it and adding more to it. Okay. So here we have the two tracks again, and I'm not gonna play the whole mystery game with this one. I know which one is which. The track one is the Burl in green. Track two is the PreSonus 4848 in blue. I'm gonna do as usual. I'm just gonna play through, switching back and forth rapidly about once every measure between the two tracks so that you can quantify in your head if there is a audible difference between these two tracks, and also again, as in this case, is to decide whether or not the audible difference that is apparent is enough to warrant us changing the workflow in the studio to employ this particular unit for the print track situation. So I'm just going to hit the play. Going to switch back and forth between the solos. Again, just keep an eye on the solo buttons, and you also see that the tracks change as I swap back and forth between the two of them. We will start on the Burl. I will switch back and forth. Here we go.
So use your fingers at any time, yeah. it's good, but when you are mine, I don't do what I should. I got it bad for ya. I got it bad for ya. I got it bad for you, yeah. I got it bad for ya. I got it bad for ya. I got it bad for you. I'm a man that tried it, never letting go. When I see you walk, I'm losing all control. I'm losing all control. So come on, woman, I'm gonna do it right. And I'll do it if it takes all night. I got it bad for ya. I got it bad for ya. I got it bad for you, yeah. I got it bad for ya. I got it bad for ya. I got it bad for you. I've been around the block. I made some time. The way you look at me, you're looking so fine. What can I say to move this thing along? So take a chance on me, you can't go wrong. Yeah, yeah. I got your number, and you got mine. So use your fingers, not anytime, yeah. I got it bad for you. I got it bad for you. I got it bad for you. I got it bad for you.
Okay. So I forgot, and before I started that, to just let you know what I did. These tracks have not been altered in any way in my DAW, except to level match them at -6 dB, so they're coming out at the same volume. Okay, I've done nothing else to them. There are plugins on this session, but they are not active at this point in time. I have auto align 2 on both tracks for the null test in a little while. I have adapter metric in here, and I have decibel in here, but they are all inactive at this point, so that playthrough was dry. The only active plugin I have on this session, of course, is my Restream plugin to get the audio out of Reaper and into OBS. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is, as usual, is I have one track loaded into adapter metric. Okay, and in this case, I have the Burl loaded into adapter, so I'm going to mute the Burl track on the playback. Okay, I am going to enable auto align for this part. All right, so I have auto align enabled, and as we've got, basically we're adjusting by 46 samples to line the two tracks up. No big deal. Okay, that's not doing much. So in this case, as we're listening through the two tracks, if I'm switching back and forth between them, the blue track on the big button here is the 4848 track that's being played through the DAW. When I switch over to the orange button, it's playing the Burl track from inside of the adapter metric. Okay, so let me just make sure really quick that they are level matched. So bear with me 1 second while I do that. I have it in sync mode, so when I switch back and forth, there shouldn't be any audible click or change. Let me get it rolling here a little quick. Let me hit a little bit of volume match. Okay, so they're volume matched, minus 0.57 dB, no big deal. Okay, so I'm going to just, like I said, it really does not matter for this which one I'm playing. I'm just going to have like we're going to start with the PreSonus, the 4848 track playing. But we're going to look at, as usual, we're going to look at the tonal spectrum to see if you're getting an EQ jump in any of the range of frequencies. We will look at a little bit of phase correlation, not that it matters, and we're going to look at stereo image and dynamics. Stereo image and dynamics, to me, for this comparison, are probably the most important, and spectrum as well, because to my ears coming into this, there is a very, very slight but audible difference between these two tracks, where I feel that the Burl track has a slightly warmer, rounder low end, whereas the PreSonus is a little bit brighter in the high end. But we're talking just minute differences as usual between the two tracks. So I'm just going to run through it once. We're going to look at some numbers and see if the Burl is significantly altering the actual physical spectrums of the track, in any way. All right, so let's roll it. As usual with this, when it's blue, you see that the orange line is superimposed here. When I go to the orange, you'll see that the blue line is superimposed here. This line across the top is the 5-second average of the EQ frequency. Okay, so just rolling it basically now, you can see that the lines are superimposed for the most part across the spectrum. I don't see any difference in the low end at all. I don't actually see any departures or tearing in there, except, well, there was one little one right there. But again, those little departures and tears can be attributed to EQ differences or phase differences or, converter lag or anything. There's a lot of reasons to see that. But if they just happen temporarily, they really have no impact on the overall sonic sound, sonic spectrum of the actual tracks. Okay? So as you can say, playing through the first verse, these things are pretty much identical across the board. Stereo image-wise, you can see that there are occasional differences through the spectrum. But for the most part, neither one is consistently wider than the other. The width is just changing through the spectrum as it plays through. Phase correlation, slight variations, nothing at all earth-shattering at all in this. All right, so let's let the dynamics roll for a minute and see. And again, even in the dynamic spectrum, there's like maybe a 0.1 dB difference between them at times. But overall, across the spectrum, there is no increase in dynamic range from one to the other. So you're not gaining any dynamic range from one to the other. Stereo image continues to be, in the chorus, continues to be superimposed for the most part. There are departures in various areas of the frequency spectrum, but not a permanent change. It's not like one is constantly wider than the other. Okay? And at this point in the song, into the bridge section, again, there is, across the entire spectrum, there's no physical difference between the two tracks. Now, as I've said before, I'm going to reiterate the point again now. This is a strictly technical, scientific look at the two tracks. Yes, you can have audible differences or perceived audible differences between the two tracks that don't show up in the spectrum analysis and so forth. But from a purely technical point of view, the Burl is not altering these tracks to any great degree whatsoever. Okay? So it comes down then to the question of, are you hearing enough of an audible difference? Are you gaining enough of an audible advantage from one to the other to use it over our present and current workflow? Okay? That's the question that we try to answer in all of these. Okay? So now, usually in these comparisons, I will do a null test. And just for the sake of continuity and everything else, I'm going to do a null test on this one. As usual, I'm going to have decibel open. I'm going to play through the track. I'm going to throw one or the other out of phase. When I hit the phase button down here, it turns blue. Now those tracks are 180 degrees out of phase. Okay. Now because the Burl is coloring the track, it has a transformer working on it. It's got other possible circuitry working on it. I don't know the internal workings of the box. These tracks should not null to any great degree, okay? Because there should be a technical difference between them, even though when we're looking at on the adapter metric, we're not seeing a huge difference between them. A null test on this particular instance proves absolutely nothing beyond the fact that they are not the same track. But if in the interest of, you know, complete transparency in this and going through all of the steps that we've gone through and all of our other comparisons, I'm going to do a null test. So let me play this through. Okay. And just for the sake of knowledge, as usual, the way I have these tracks set up when they're both playing on top of each other, we're peaking out around minus 9 dB and we're averaging somewhere around minus 40. Or no, excuse me, minus 54 dB. Okay. So when I throw these out of phase, there is definitely, a lot less range between those two tracks than I actually expected there to be, because we're now peaking at minus 53 dB and our average level is at minus 78 dB. And if you listen though, you can basically hear the whole song. It's just at a very low level, okay? Which basically means that, that converter and the other coloration going on in the Burl is across the entire spectrum. Also, as I've stated every time we've done this, every time you run audio through an analog setup like we have in the studio, there's going to be subtle variations between the tracks because every piece of electronic gear in that studio has a tolerance level that it goes through. And even if you run two prints like one right after the other, there are going to be differences. Okay. So a null test in this case is just showing that, the tracks are very, very similar. It's the same song, but there are differences between them based upon the fact that it's two different runs through analog hardware, through an analog to digital converter that is purposefully coloring the sound, as opposed to an analog to digital converter that is not purposefully coloring the sound. Okay. So in the conclusion of this one, I would always say too, like my recommendation to David based upon what I am hearing and what I am seeing in this evaluation would be, I don't see that the Burl, even with the purposeful coloration that it's making to the track, I don't see that the Burl is offering us enough of an advantage on the final print to warrant, one, the expense of adding it to the workflow, and two, the change in the total overall change in workflow that we would have to employ in the studio to actually use the particular unit. So, it's a good sounding box, and to be honest, all the boxes that we've looked at, the Dangerous Music, the Rupert Neve, now the Burl. If you have a need in your studio for a dedicated analog to digital converter, all three of these would be an excellent choice. And your choice would be dictated not so much on the quality of the actual analog to digital conversion as it would be based upon the features that the box is giving you above the converters. So in other words, if you prefer the sound of the Dangerous Music with its transformer engaged, then your choice would be to go for that one. If you prefer the advantage that the Rupert Neve is giving you with the tape emulating silk circuit and the transformer circuit available to you, then that would be an excellent choice for your studio. If you like the coloration that the Burl is offering you, then it would be an excellent choice for your studio. We are never saying that these are bad boxes. What we have been saying all along is that the advantage that it's not even advantage. There would be no advantage in our workflow, the way we use our studio, to employ one of these units in it. If one of these boxes had come into here and just been mind-blowingly better than the others, or made just a huge improvement in the overall quality of the print track that we're producing, we would have added it to it. But we're not seeing it at this point, and so I'm basically going to tell David again, for the third time, if it was me, I would pack the Burl back up in the box and send it back to Sweetwater and use that money for something else. Okay, so I'm going to cut this one off here because, like I said, I don't really have a lot else to say about this. I'm sure that me and David are going to be doing a wrap up video where we go through all of our methodology and testing and everything again. And he of course is putting up videos explaining his final decisions on all of these. None of which I have seen yet. I don't know what his final decision has been for any of these. If he's deciding to keep one, I would certainly be in support of it. But if he's also deciding not to, I'm 100% in support of that. So thank you guys for watching this video. Please remember to like, subscribe. Please subscribe. We need subscribers on this channel. Hit the like button. Drop some comments down below. Let's talk about this. Remember to be civil, and we will see you guys in future videos and live streams, and we do very much appreciate all the support we get from this community. You guys are the best. Thanks a lot, guys. Bye.